So you're looking not for the ornamental Japanese maples that are slow growers and short. You're looking for like a green leaf maple or a blood gold. Or...
We had talked about red, probably a red one. A red, as you come into the park to the right, put a red one, and then another variety could be one of my favorites called, and it does really well here. I have two of them on the bluff, one on a bluff, one close, right there on the water, and it's a sago keiko, and it's got lime green leaves and red bark. So I mean, it's done really well. So, and like I said, it's probably 10 feet away from the bluff, and it's been there. That one's been there probably at least 10 years. So they're not going to get, these trees are not going to get huge. They're just good understory trees. The most, like you're saying, 15 feet, yeah. 20.
Which in the locations we don't have to worry about any canopies, kind of interfering with them, or we would have to worry about directional pruning at this point.
And one of the considerations was obstructing the view of the people that live there. That had to be consideration. So.
Yeah, so I went there this morning. I didn't plan to. I was just jogging by. I haven't jogged in a while, and so I had something else going on. I had to relieve some stress. But there's this park better than anybody in the room probably, and Linda too. So there's 7 trees I counted inside the fence, and the fence doesn't go all the way around the park. And then I noticed that if you go down the street, you'll hit the park, and then the last house on the right, the fence actually goes in front of that house, but they have such a very thick buffer.
Yeah.
I had to almost be peeping up their driveway to see if there was a house there. I was like, I think there's a house there, and man, there's some nice houses. I wouldn't, anybody'd love to have a house there, but then so it's 7 trees. Quite a number of them are on the edge of the I guess it drops down like a bluff, and then the left side, the fence there's no fence on that side, and it's I just kind of stared there. I had too much going on, something else, but I just stood in the park this morning and looked around, and looks nice. So yeah.
Nice swing.
Yeah, they did a nice job.
2 swings.
Just to answer your question, where it is, it's in Pigeon Point on the far eastern side of Pigeon Point. If you went down the side of the National Cemetery,
right?
oh, I said that wrong. Western side. If you went down the side of the National Cemetery and you kept going straight, you'd run into Cuthbert Road. Or Cuthbert Street, and then follow that straight
If you
on.
follow Lafayette, so if you went up Rogers and then turned left on Lafayette, it would be the 2nd Street on your right hand side.
Tony, he says now it's
It's
on.
really
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's a nice passive park. It's, they've got table and chairs there. And
It used to be called
swing.
Horse Hole.
Horse Hole.
Horse Hole. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And then when the city took it over, they named it Cuthbert.
You can only imagine why it was called that.
Very original.
Yes.
Real horse.
So,
Yeah. They run it.
okay, so that's where that suggestion went, and Councilman Squatty's not here to discuss it, so we'll move along.
Is that
He's watching though. He's the one texting me.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
is the selection though something that the committee agrees with?
Great.
So would you like to vote? Would you vote?
Is there a motion to move forward with the planting of 2 Japanese maples in Cuthbert Street Park?
The leadership classes, like they're buying the trees and putting them in honor of their class or something?
It's in honor of their class.
Who does purchase it?
So it would work through probably a private place. There would be a donation, and then we would work with whichever local vendor we would choose to purchase the trees. And then obviously Public Works would help in the system plan.
Okay.
So the leadership class gives the money to private place, and then they purchase the trees. The city purchases the trees, and then we'll maintain them for the rest of their life.
And they're also talking about getting some plaques made.
I had looked up, I thought it was, somebody had told me the tree, it was, I got it wrong though. Probably told me Japanese maple, so I looked up Japanese elm tree. And so I looked up the wrong tree. So like I said, I got a lot going on, but, yeah, so whatever y'all wanna do.
There's a bunch of different varieties to choose from regarding Japanese maples. But I think you have to be selective in what you choose because it has to be able to handle the heat and humidity of, this particular area, so. Okay.
But I got my words missed and I looked up elm instead of maple.
Anyway, so I think you wanted a motion and approval from Ptac to move forward with the Japanese maple idea. So is there a motion? Okay, and second? All right, the motion passes, and I'm glad you guys are happy with that idea too.
We don't need to vote on it.
You just did?
Oh, we did, 2, okay.
Yes, you just did.
All right, we're gonna move on
I thought we
to,
needed 3 because there's 4 of us. I don't know how
First and second.
that. Okay, thank you.
discussion about the Driftwood project.
Open up to y'all.
Well,
You have the floor.
okay. Driftwood was a local character. He was Buford's Forrest Gump before Forrest Gump was Forrest Gump. And he was a real person. And he was practically forensically invisible, although he was all over town all the time. For the longest while, he lived in this little shack at the foot of the Harbor Island Bridge right across from where Johnson Creek Tavern is. In 1963, he was mysteriously firebombed and he moved into town, and old man Willie Shepherd let him stay in what was left of the Sinclair gas station, which is now the ice cream shop across.
Next to Saltus, yeah.
Right next to Saltus. That's all that's left of it, but that's where he stayed. And then that's pretty close to where y'all don't see this little picture that went around. Anybody not seen the picture?
I don't think they got that.
That was,
You sent them.
circa 1970, standing on top of one of his palmetto tree arts and then holding a mask he made in a voodoo staff. And he was quite the character on the islands and in the town. I had an interest in writing a story which was kind of like using him as a clean sheet of white paper because he was everybody's everybody and nobody knew anything about him. So I started writing this story, Driftwood Unmasked, like we all wear a mask. When I shave in the morning, I'm seeing a different guy than you're looking at because I know who's behind the mirror, right? Driftwood Unmasked. So I started that in 2011, spent 5 or 6 years on it, published it in 2018. I was concerned about the tree when Driftwood was in town. He did all sorts of odd jobs, but he hung out
Put this up.
primarily.
Do they know where the tree is that we're talking about?
You know where the blood one is? The red brick building on Bellamy Curve?
Yes.
Where you go get blood?
Yes.
If you turn the corner, that tree is in between the road and the sidewalk, and you have to actually get
This
out
is
of your car
Boundary
in
Street.
order to see it.
So the mask is facing the sidewalk and not the road.
Right. But that was Ma Miller, so his hangouts route was Coast Grocery. We did a lot of work for beer and peanuts, and then he'd go to the Yankee Bar and Grill and be an Irishman for drinks, and then he'd hang over at Ma Miller's and do carryouts. And in the 60s, he carved that. So that being, for that tree to be large enough to carve that face is probably 100 years old. And it's been there for 60 years, and it's probably the only palmetto tree down on Carteret and Boundary Street that doesn't have a car ding in it. You know?
Yeah.
Or been killed by a storm or one thing or another. So my interest early on was when I heard the Boundary Street project, from where it is now, is gonna come all the way down to Bellamy Curve. My interest was in not letting it just be thumped over and thrown in a wood chipper. And so I had an early conversation, didn't really go anywhere until Fleetwood revived that conversation. And so here we are. And I think it's important to preserve the tree because it's a piece of local history. It's very unique. And Driftwood was far more than the little old ratty looking Irishman everybody thought him to be. And without going into a whole bunch of stuff, I think take a Forrest Gump mindset when I read you this. This is the last paragraph in the book. And I did find the trick of the clue to his real identity in the Dead Man's Alley, which kind of puts a kind of a spooky, the last chapter is channeling Driftwood like from the heavenly side. And interestingly enough, the day he died was the same day my daddy was born on, and the same day I died, and the same day we had our book debut at Boondocks in 2018, so kind of some stuff going here. So here we have it, the truth. Think of Forrest Gump now. Driftwood's redemption. My best efforts at finding the real Driftwood Corey. Hugh Patrick Knox Corey, with 2 R's. Irish adventurer, sailor, painter, salesman, elevator operator, journalist, artist, charismatic storyteller, decorated war veteran. For anybody with that, he won a presidential citation at 4 Bronze Stars. Decorated war veteran and beer drinker. Carver of beautiful palmetto masks and totems. A peripheral visitor on the edge of reality. Colorful, ratty, raucous, raunchy womanizer, unapologetically taunting social conformity, and an honorable man. Oh, according to the story, he left Ireland about 2 steps ahead of Scotland Yard, because he had been a hot-headed youth in Belfast, taking pot shots at the Brits, which is not looked well upon. So he escapes to the States, gets his citizenship. Scotland Yard can't hang him. He bums around odd jobs, as I just described. The war starts. His youngest brother, James, is killed flying with the RAF. A couple of weeks later, his next brother, Edward, is killed on a British submarine, Christmas Eve of '41. Driftwood's now 34. He gets mad with God. He changes religion from Catholic to Protestant, and his wife, Elizabeth Knott, leaves him. He joins the U.S. Navy. He ends up serving on one of the most honored destroyers in the United States Navy, DD-492, the Bailey. And in an engagement in the Commandorsky Islands off the Aleutians, his fleet goes against the Japanese fleet that's outgunned them 3-1, and Driftwood's boat is the boat that successfully attacks the largest Japanese boat, turns the whole thing around. The United States wins. They drift home 1,200 miles, trying not to get sunk and killed. After that, Driftwood in the same boat served in the Pacific. Every held-hold 2nd Marine Division crawled up on. Driftwood was out there shelling Japanese positions, getting kamikaze and shot at. Every engagement, 10 or 20 guys get killed. Driftwood survives, Driftwood survives, Driftwood survives. Finally, after 18 months of steady combat, he cracks. They send him to San Diego, what you call it, to the psych ward, wherever. After 8 months, they said, we can't fix you. Humpty Dumpty is broken. So they give him an honorable medical, pat on the back, $193 discharge, and have a nice life. Now, everybody knows the story of vets, PTSD. In his day, it was shell shock. I'm 72. Everybody my age and a few years older knew Driftwood. He got here mysteriously in the 50s, was our icon until he left in the 70s, and he ends up buried in the Field of Heroes in Andersonville, Georgia. So I think the memory of Driftwood, the impact on, historical impact of characters in Beaufort, every town's got one, and the visual evidence of Driftwood's time here and the stories that everybody like me and Harry Shikades and everybody else can tell you. Is just a guy that refused to knuckle under. I think he had a story to tell. He chose me to tell it, restoring a little dignity to a man most assumed had none until it finds out his combat history and all these other things. So I think that's why it's important to save the tree, not let it get lightning struck, run over, wood chipped, or anything else. As I understand, you've had numerous people call you about the tree, saying, "What's up with the tree?" Yeah. And, so he's not only just a guy that, life really dumped on the guy, but an Irishman's Irishman, you know, I think he just closed the door on one life, couldn't handle that one anymore, and stepped through another door into another life. And because of his artwork and his roundabouts, people call him Driftwood, he accepted that. Even his common law wife at one point never knew his real name. So I think deeply he was still afraid Scotland Yard might come get him. But Harbor Island back in the 50s and early 60s, no cell phones, no internets. He was literally at the end of the world. And I think he'd had enough of sailing. So my surmise was, and Grace Cordial at the library, everybody know Grace Cordial? Runs the historic district, downtown library. Married to her, true blood Irishman. So she loved the story of Driftwood. She was a bulldog to help me dig this out. So I got his war records, enlistment papers, fighter, scrapper, had a little dose of syphilis, scars from fighting and scrapping, served time in the brig.
You've got a picture of his gravestone.
I got his gravestone.
Military burial in Indianville, or
Yeah.
Andersonville.
So after all that life gave this guy, he survived it in his own way and became one of Beaufort's most notable characters, kind of like a Forrest Gump guy. And I think saving the tree restores a little dignity to a man that deserves it as an honorable vet, sort of forgotten by the whole world, like a lot of those guys back then. And we all know somebody, family or friends, who suffers from that. It's just, you know, you just can't outrun it, you can't outdrink it, you can't get away from it. So,
Can I jump in?
sure.
One of the things that we talked about when we met is that it might not be, doable to move the tree or save the tree or whatever. And I can't remember who you said had the idea of just taking the center
Yeah.
totem of the tree and placing it in a park with a plaque. And so I thought that was another reasonable, because like I said, moving the tree, it might not survive, but at least we can have part of the tree for that memorial and just doesn't get, run over or in a storm knocked over and that piece of history just kind of disappeared.
You guys know the biology or whatever the ology is, trying to move a 100-year-old palmetto tree. How survivable is that?
I'd say about 10-15%. Yeah.
But if you leave it there, the laws of probability. I could go put a stick in the ground out in the middle of Bay Street, and if you wait long enough, lightning's gonna hit that stick. Might be tomorrow or 10,000 years from tomorrow, but the odds will catch up with you. I know, I've been struck by lightning once. So I don't wanna see it go by getting damaged, hurricane come through and just rip the lid off of it, or somebody accidentally who's working whatever the highway's doing, and he doesn't know one palmetto tree from another, whack, zip, and driftwood's gone. And I think it'd be a shame to lose that little piece of history. I think we should preserve it, ask y'all to help us preserve it in a dignified way, in the right little space where people can appreciate it.
And thinking of, is it called Gleason Park with the tree tour begins? Merrill. Morale.
Corner of Craven and
Yeah,
Craven and Carteret.
Carteret.
right, where that tree tour starts.
the,
Went and looked at that park and it has several places that would be, a beautiful site for the totem.
I think, wasn't it the garden club that's got the historic tree walk?
Yeah.
That has some interest in the tree and preserving it in one way or another. So that's pretty much the wrap on it.
I wanted to say a little bit about the cover of the book. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but this is a horseshoe crab shell.
Yeah.
That Driftwood used to paint and make into mask for the local witch doctors.
Yeah.
You did the cover?
No, that's a live mask, actually. Yeah. That's not a painting, that's a real thing.
Yeah, we have the mask at our house.
Yeah.
And that picture was taken at the Chapel of Ease at midnight.
Yeah.
The guy wearing the mask with dreadlocks and
Oh,
Spanish moss around him, but he was like really well entrenched in the Gullah culture out on the islands too.
Yeah. The local photographer, I've got his name written back there, but he used lighting to make that look like a lightning strike, you know, at night, because, you know,
Or boating looking.
I don't know how spooky you might be, but you're not gonna find me sitting on a bench at Chapel Beach at 3 in the morning. You know what I'm saying? So,
We still have several friends here in town. Do you know Celeste Prince Brown? She has one of these totems.
yeah,
Yeah, David Brown, and they preserve very well, you know, and stand, you know, to stand the test of time, you know, they're treated correctly. And, but like I said, I just think, you know, having something like that that's so unique to Beaufort, and other people have collected it too, and also the Gullah culture, you know, it knows this fellow. It's not just in the downtown people.
Yeah.
He's known throughout, you know, the northern Beaufort County.
you know, Geddes down.
Yes.
When Geddes was a young boy, Driftwood never drove anything. I mean, he never had anything that you could find. He didn't own a car, he didn't drive, he didn't have a mailbox, he had nothing. But Geddes would drive him around. And they'd go to Land's End and dig clams and do stuff like that. And he's got some of those masks. And the most interesting Driftwood stories, so does Parachute Katie's and Roger Pinckney the 14th had some amazing stories about it. You know, Tommy Logan, three other guys whose name is slipping me right now used to have their Saturday evening drinks on one of the porches right off the point.
We still do.
Yeah, and here come old Driftwood just singing his way around the corner and invited himself right up the stairs to the bar. You know, for all everybody with tales of Driftwood. I mean, he was the greatest womanizer in the world. He'd been this, he'd been that. I mean, he's 5 foot nothing of pure Irishman, you know. So he was a historical landmark. He was Beaufort Sports Gump.
I'm also going to Atlanta on June 29th because it's being made into a screenplay.
Yeah.
And we're going to a live reading with actors and actresses reading the parts, being around the table like this.
Yeah.
And each person's going to take a different part and read it. So we're really looking forward to that.
Right.
And when they'll try to, you know, raise the money, the producers will try to raise the money to make the film. But that's another thing that if that goes through, that'll be very, you know, probably come to Beaufort to try to make the film. Where else would be?
When you do it, yeah. So unless y'all have some questions of me, I think I about covered 360 on Driftwood, who he was, where he came from, what he was, the public Driftwood, the real Driftwood. You know what Coast Grocery is? You know Coast Grocery. I forget what they call it now.
Urban market.
Yeah, but J.M. Coast, which was of my dad's age, World War II vet, his daughter Pam was like 4 years ahead of me in high school. And Driftwood was very friendly to her. I actually gave her a pair of earrings when she was like 14 or 16 or something like that. When she heard that I was doing this book, she found me and came and said, you know, I've got something you might be interested in. And she was cleaning out her daddy's attic. She found this book, The 50 Most Influential Lives of the 20th Century. How many liquor bums you know are reading books like that? But inside the dust cover was H.P. Knox Corey, H.P.K. Corey. With that, Grace Cordial let me go all the way back to Ireland.
And we actually took Driftwood, found his place in Belfast, and did a book signing tour in Ireland.
Yeah. So Driftwood was a cat, you know? And I just think fate and dignity deserves him a little better than in his file. I've got one single yellow sheet of paper, and it's his death certificate. And no one claimed the body, no family, no children, no friends. They didn't even do an autopsy. They said, this guy is just slap worn out. And, but his headstone's there. H.P. Knox Corey, Seaman First Class, laying in a field of heroes, and nobody knew any of that until I can't did that, so,
Where is he buried?
in the Andersonville, Federal Cemetery.
But he died in Beaufort?
No,
Augusta,
he died in
Hospital.
Georgia. He died in Georgia.
They sent him to the Veterans Hospital
I'm
in
thinking,
Augusta.
a social group realized that, alcoholism and PTSD and his demons were about to just get him, and, so, let's see. He was buried on October 16th, 1981, Andersonville National Historic Site. Route 1, Box 800, blah, 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 section site, P, headstone, whatever. His last known address in Georgia was 3021 Dublin Street, Lawrence, Georgia. How's that for an Irishman, you know? So I think a civic group here, that he was
Got
a
him to the
character's
hospital.
character. I think they tried to get him the help he needed to have, and they couldn't get it here, so they sent him to a Veterans Association, and he ended up there. Anyway, that's our man. In circa 1960, a woman by the name of Louise Culp donated a huge collection of photographs and artwork to the Beaufort.
What year was that he died? 61? No.
81.
Oh, 80.
81.
He looks familiar.
Well,
So he has good passion. So he, you know, you cleared up a mystery.
Yeah.
Because Adam has been mentioning Driftwood. Who's Driftwood?
Yeah,
Right.
this
And
is
that was-
David Lauderdale's,
And now I feel like I know him, but you know, he went to Coast, he went to, what was it, the Yankee, I mean, he's a Beaufort OG, I mean,
Right.
so I met Pearl at the Yankee, I've been to Coast,
okay.
so yeah, whatever's done needs to be really truly neat here, you know, obviously not in a wood chipper, sure, yeah.
No, no, not the wood chipper.
and I was kind of wondering like how we ended up at this committee meeting, because you contacted me because someone at the county
So,
asked y'all to reach out to us.
and then it went to Mayor Cronin, and then he sent it to Scott Marshall, who then sent it to Nathan Farrell, our publisher director, that came to us for Ptac.
Okay.
So, Beaufort, we try to find ways to say yes, and look into things. And I think that's usually what makes us stand out more than other people. A lot of people always call the city, because we answer the phone and we try to look into things. But, you know, when we saw the tree, and obviously our concerns is transplanting the tree and trying to get it to survive. Obviously, the chances are very low just because of the height and the age of the tree.
Right.
But then, you know, we also try to transition to how we can memorialize it, you know, with the tree. And then obviously, if the tree had to be moved, you know, could we cut out that piece?
Mhm.
And then, you know, putting some clear resin coating on it to preserve it, and then obviously finding a permanent home for it.
Right.
Obviously, away from the roadway.
Right.
Would be preferred, you know, because just like the trees here, there's magnets in the trees, so cars
Oh,
always
yeah.
find them. So,
Maybe next to a little bench where tired legs walking the tree route can sit and
so
watch, and a little something, a little inscription or a little plexiglass or something with a little bit of history there.
I think it's one of those things too that, you know, like teach your children not just about history, but about, you know, respect and dignity and being kind and remembering people, even if they're not, you know, have the big titles, and that everybody has their story and has a piece of the history of Beaufort. You know, it's not just the hoi pollois or the, you know, places that are named after, streets that are named after people and stuff. I mean, I like Horse Hole. I think it's a great name for a park. It's like, what's the history of that? I mean, did anybody know? I mean,
Well, I can only guess that
yeah.
at the time, that's where they took horses to get rid of them.
Yeah.
That's what I've always been told. I grew up here, that's what I was told.
Well, you know, one of my favorite wines is Pouilly Fouissé, and it was from a special part of France where there had been a stampede of 1,000 horses, and they went over a cliff. And that whole acreage there, because of the calcium and the flint in their bones and stuff, makes that special Chardonnay that can only be grown in that region.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's, I mean, so when you said horse hole, I mean,
You never knew that?
No,
Yeah.
maybe we ought to put
Fine, we need to
grapevines
buy a
out
bar
there.
instead. And test it, yeah.
Let's put some
Exactly.
grapevines out there and see if it works.
Really?
Okay,
Yeah,
It's at that park? That would be interesting.
yeah, that'd be cool. But you can't, I mean.
so we have to determine a direction, what comments do you all have? What direction would you like us to move in? It seems to me that the options are to do a plaque on site or something on site where it currently is.
The hardest thing, and this is why I would say taking the memorial and putting it into a city-owned park, just so that it's easier for us to dictate what's in our parks.
No, I know, but then there was gonna be an or,
Yeah,
or,
or.
cut it and
Yeah.
move it to another location.
Because even now with the plaque, like, we were talking, like, you've driven by it several
Oh,
times.
it's
and-
right on the road.
Yeah, and,
Right.
and the mask is on the sidewalk, so so the plaque wouldn't even be noticeable.
It would only be by pedestrians, not
Yeah,
by,
right.
But
One
there's
thing-
no, like, the South Carolina Department of Transportation hadn't said like, we're coming through and cutting down this tree. I mean, there's no,
There's not, but.
except for preserving what it
Yeah,
is.
but the hardest thing obviously is if we implement anything, it's a DOT right away, so everything would have to go through an encroachment permit process. So if, there are very strict guidelines, I think when I spoke with Nate, that there is something where you can't pour concrete and have something set in stone in the right of way. So, we would have to be very specific, we would have to follow their guidelines and then choose a memorial based off of their guidelines, just so the process would move a little bit faster, because obviously if you try to do something that's outside their guidelines, they're gonna deny it. And then you're back to square one again of doing all the research. So,
Since it is DOT, what do you think the reaction would be about removing the tree?
well, one, it wouldn't be done during the day. It would have to be night work, just because of the roadway, they wouldn't wanna cause, any, disturbance in traffic. Mostly anytime we do road work has to be either night or weekend
No,
work.
I mean DOT.
Well, they
They would probably say, fine.
I'm sure if we were going to remove that portion and safely discard the rest of the palm tree, I wouldn't see an issue with it. I don't think they'll really, just like you said, if a palm tree got hit, they're not gonna say, let's glue it back together and try to
Sure.
clean it up, I don't see that being the issue, especially if we're trying to memorialize it. The issue would be if we were going to implement some sort of memorial in their right of way. So that's where I think the issue would lie, because obviously we would go through the encroachment permit process.
Okay, so moving in the direction of taking the tree down and preserving the totem, where do you wanna move it to? That becomes the next decision, it seems to me.
I did want to revisit the last time when we talked. I mentioned the idea of possibly getting a local artist, because we have so many artists here in Beaufort, and I feel like they would eat this up as a chance to really make something out of this and build a memorial local artist that we could put up in a park or something like
That's
that.
a good idea.
And you would get the city involved. I mean, they have so many different art shows and different events where they do things with driftwood, all kinds of different stuff. And I feel like there's a lot of talent here, and that you would have some people really jump at the chance to put something together.
Right.
And with the information that you've given, the Irish background, there's a lot of people of Irish descent here too. Veterans, the Gullah, things like that. And so I think that's a great idea. I know that would probably take some time to try to search out a local artist, or the process of finding that. And then also, we had conversations about the Riders Park, and I did some research on that, and I realized that that's kind of in the middle of where the National Cemetery is right there, the sports complex, right? Basil Green, and I believe he was also a veteran as well. And so just a lot of history there, so that could also be a good park location. And, I know I had mentioned something about renaming it to something, but I mean, that could also be another name.
Yep.
Since, name for that park, if we ever came to that point.
Just as an aside, I had several veterans go over this with me because anytime you talk vets, if you get sideways, somebody's gonna come up your skirt with it,
He said, that's not how it goes.
Yeah, and this guy, Sergeant Jones, he's 3-time Vietnam tour, 1967, blah, 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 blah. He's in his middle, late 80s now, but anyway, he read the book with the eye towards treated PTSD. And at the end, he, let's see, here he says, Gibbs McDowell has written an exceptional book that every combat veteran should read. From reality to fantasy and back to reality, as well as pulled into the story with glee and waiting and wanting more. Call it what you want, PTSD, shell shock, whatever. Corey is a true example of the struggle to come home back from the fantasy world to everyday life. After all, there's a little driftwood Corey in all of us,
So I think, Art, there should be 2 routes we should go. I think one, we should have a certified arborist look at the tree, to give us a report of if it was transplanted, survival rate, everything, get that written, documented.
Undocumented, okay, so
So-
is that something, yes, Michael?
So that's something I would probably ask Michael Murphy to take a look at for us. And then we would look into the DOT regulations and then see if there's something in there that can help us along with the process. I know if we go the artist route, if we want to do, I know my mother-in-law, she works for USCB, so that could be an in for us to find some local artists if we needed to. I spoken to her briefly about it, and she said there are some artists that do some really good work that would be, like you said, jumping at the bit to do something
Yeah.
like this. So there's a bunch of different routes that we can go, if that's what everybody thinks we should do.
I think that is a good direction. This tree's about 30 feet high.
Yeah, and like if we could save the tree, like if the arborist says the tree can be moved, I'm for that first, because if it dies, then we can cut out the pretty part.
Exactly.
But if we could save the tree, I
Good
mean,
point, and it'd be your property at that point.
But the only thing is that it would be a huge expense to move it. I'm sure it would be a huge expense. And then, will it live or die? Probably, I don't know that it would survive.
Depending on where you move it to.
Well, I'm sure, obviously, if we asked Michael Murphy to, we would ask for recommendations for a tree company to relocate the tree, just because they would have the equipment on hand that would be best suitable for a transplant of a tree that night.
Well, and just one consideration I thought of relative to moving a tree. Somebody who knows why we're doing what we're doing would have to be on site right now, because the guy on the machinery has moved 1,000-pound trees. One tree is the same as all. Yank him out of the ground, throw him on a flatbed, take him to where you're going to replant him. It's his job. It's not an artist. It's not his job to worry about what the tree looks like. His job is to pull it out of the ground. So are you going to have a clamp around the tree? Are you going to have belts on the tree? How do you stabilize it when you pull it? Does he really care? If it slips and scrubs, there it goes.
Would the city be the one
You know what I'm saying?
removing it
Oh,
and
yeah.
replanting it?
Right.
Transplanting a tree of that size. Smaller trees, usually within the first 1 to 3 years, if we needed to transplant or relocate a tree, we could do that. We would probably go with the best vendor available that we would feel confident enough. We would lean on an arborist's expertise to help us, guide us to a company,
Right.
but the city would also oversee So
Planning
if,
it.
yeah, so if.
I think
if
I
you
talked to you
go-
about Isaiah on the Parkway, and I talked to you about that too. But one time, a couple of months ago, he told me he would do it for free. So I don't know if that's something that I wanna consider. Some people have a lot of confidence in them, some people don't, but I just throw that on the table that.
So I think the next two steps, number one is to get Michael Murphy to assess it.
Yeah.
And then secondly, look into the DOT regulations and requirements.
If it is
And-
moved, you would use a strap, I believe. Dan, you were questioning about how would they move it. It should be, I mean, if I were to move it, I would support it with strap system.
Maybe even, something up against the totem part to cushion it.
I was thinking like foam wrap.
Yeah,
Right.
something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that.
Real just to make sure
Packing, foam wrap.
that more damage.
Yeah, no, I mean, you need something, one, to protect the bark.
I measured, it's almost 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
The base itself. I've always wondered, with Ma Miller's at the time, being a local watering hole, you get beer and boiled peanuts and groceries and whatever. I wonder if nobody at the city ever said anything to, hey, what the hell are you doing?
Carve it on the tree out
You know?
there.
They probably did though, you think about it, people hung out there all the time and it sounds like to me, or at least the way I see it, as I think he was probably going there, hanging out there, and he would just go out there and start
Little by little.
little by little.
Yeah.
And that's what happened probably over a year's time
Yeah.
or however long time it takes him.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's probably just because he just would go there on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I was thinking with all the foreboding behind the story, something bad was gonna happen to whoever cuts the tree.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that's what
That kind of came across my mind too, especially if you have to do it at night.
Yeah, wow.
He would tell you that, I'm sure he would.
Yeah.
You know, when he was
We
in
could get
town,
some root through.
Yeah,
pocket
yeah,
while
it'd
you're
be
doing
very-
it.
one of the things he
Sage.
did for a little beer money, whatever. The Piggly Wiggly grocery store, at the corner of Valley Street, used to be Piggly Wiggly there. They paid him to clean the floors at night and crush and dent cans. All the stuff they couldn't put on the shelf, no labels or a bent can or whatever. And he got us down, the same guy I was talking about. Said he asked Driftwood about that one time. He said, well, how do you know what's in the can? He said, well, laddie boy, that's the mystery of it all, don't you see? His meal was whatever came out of the can. Yeah.
Well, thank y'all for having us
So
today.
thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
We
thank you
really
for coming.
appreciate it.
That was awesome.
Excited about this project and excited for Beaufort too, just showing how much they appreciate culture and art and the unique. I think that's one thing that everybody says about Beaufort, it's a very unique place.
Absolutely, and
So we want to make sure they still have some unique things to come and see.
I think once we square away with Michael Murphy and we understand the direction that we can go, I think then would be a good time to start looking at location. So you can let me know whatever hoops we gotta jump through your area, and then we can look for suitable places in our area too, and then
then
decide.
once you jump through those hoops, maybe we could create some language that you want to go with, a little something.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to invite y'all at some point in the near future to have a bottle of, we say, Horsehole Park on the block
That sounds good.
with a can of beanie weenies.
Yeah, we'll accept your invitation in advance.
Anybody listening that's
Out of it, we'll have teeny weenies out of a tin can.
don't go to the
Can we have
ordinance real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so
Well,
much.
thank you.
Appreciate it. And there's a
Have a
little,
great
You need
day.
me?
we're gonna have a little beer toast driftwood.
Yeah, so Michael.
Thank y'all.
You're welcome.
Thanks much.
Let's see.
Nice day.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I did you grab that? I forgot.
Well, you know how I feel. That's why I have dead trees on things.
Yeah, I didn't sleep with the Craven, and then I chased him down for 3 years, and he would ignore my calls and stuff like that, so I was like, you know what, I'm done. But,
You might could move it.
Yeah.
It's just keeping it
contact my commercial.
And I think the importance is when where you locate it, if you're gonna replant it, where you're gonna locate it, is you need to think about what would make it survive.
Yeah.
Does it need
Yeah,
more
I was
sun?
gonna say, yeah, if you put it in sun,
Yes.
almost forget it, but I think trying to move a 30-foot tree is
Pretty daunting.
For my
Pretty
knowledge
daunting.
and
Yeah,
studying into
that's-
it, you would have to put it
seriously.
in a similar, they call it kind of the, it's the geoclimate. It's, when you move it to the other spot, you want it to be as similar to where it was naturally growing as possible.
And now it's in
So
full
trying
sun.
to
And
find,
Morale Park would not be
no,
that,
because there's too much.
would not be its same environment that it was.
Yeah.
And now it's in full
If
blazing sun.
If we cut it out,
Heat coming off of the pavement.
if we cut it out, you could put it anywhere. That wouldn't be an issue, but if it was transplanting the tree, it would have to be the right location. Because you don't want to transplant it and then not give it every chance to survive.
Sure.
You want the percentage to go as high as possible.
Yeah, but think about the watering schedule.
Be a lot.
It would be a lot. It'd be a big deal.
Be doing some hand watering, buddy.
Yeah, I know. I probably got a 600 gallon buffalo.
That's right, that's for you. to
Thank
do.
you, Linda.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it was nice to see y'all. Y'all all be good. I haven't answered for you. I had it yesterday.
Okay.
So mid-March, May,
Mid-May.
mid-May.
Okay. Super, I'll let them know. Thank you.
And then
Thank
y'all
you.
send me an email.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Responsibility changes before the council.
Yes. I know you've spoken that you might not be able to make the next meeting. Right?
Which
I
is-
believe, Tony, do you know when the next work session?
Let me check. Excuse me. Let me check my calendar.
8th?
Yes.
Tuesday.
Or
Second Tuesday?
6th.
On the 6th,
Yes.
I'm going out of town on
May 6th at 5.
but my assistant, no, we,
Vice
my
Vice
vice
chair.
chair,
Vice Chair.
my vice chair might be in town.
So would you be willing to go before council?
As long as I am not out of town, I don't think I'm gonna be. And that, what day would that be?
What was that? It was May 6th, you said?
Yes, May 6th at 5.
When,
Right after May 5th.
Who's this go before? This go before council?
Yes.
I'm not having obligations that day.
In front of council at the work session.
Yes,
Okay, and what time?
it would be 5 o'clock usually, is work session.
Does that suit you? Are you good with that?
5 o'clock? I can make 5 o'clock on Tuesday. As long as it's not a Tuesday morning.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just,
Okay.
I had some comments about it, though, but, so the three of us, Isaac and Shay and myself, we weren't in on that party when it got approved to remove the duties,
Yeah.
certain duties. So,
To remove duties?
To change the responsibility, recommended changes. So what he's saying is that they weren't members of Ptac when
That was
the
discussed?
original
yeah, when it got
Right.
approved to, yeah, so, yeah, if you need clarification, I'm sorry, let me talk more clear. So, yeah, I wasn't in on that discussion, along with these two. I mean, I'd much rather go to council with, hey, we're gonna put on a festival,
Yeah.
we're gonna create a new park. But I don't know how to say this eloquently, but we take it out, we leave it in. I mean, it doesn't mean a hill of beans. Nobody's asking us to do an urban forest master plan. And I'm not against taking it out. I don't care. I don't care, leave it in, take it out. I don't give rats, you know what? But I mean, so nobody's screaming at nobody even comes to these meetings. Nobody's screaming at us to do an urban master plan. Nobody's even whispering it. So as far as this board, the Ptac board doing it, it's it's, the whole community needs to do it. It's almost like one of those not a master plan, but it is a master plan, but one of those comp plans, you know how that goes, but, so yeah, I'm just wondering, of course, I would add in some other things.
Yeah.
Hey, let's do some sports,
Yeah.
because we don't, the city of Beaufort, I see TikTok, you gave me this? So this has
That's from
TikTok,
Adam.
TikTok park on it. I just noticed that just now.
Yeah.
So that's, I believe that's owned by the county.
No, that's us. That's the city.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Oh, maybe I thought, oh,
Yeah.
or maybe vice versa, I can't remember, I've been under the gun here.
Back to what you're
So that's a basketball court then, so yeah, I always, maybe I had it backwards, I thought it was the county owned it, and then it turned out to be the city, and now I'm trying to keep it straight in my head. But, yeah, so
The only reason is because the city gave up the recreational part. So recreational would obviously be structured play. So it would be, youth leagues that would play on there. So we didn't want to maintain the fields. Beaver County was more equipped to take it. So that's why all the ball fields, that even though there's some that are on that list that are in the city and owned by the city, they are still maintained through Beaver County, just because Beaver County has all of the parks and rec. The small half-court basketball, there's one there at Ptac, and there will be a new one in, I believe it's Washington Street Park. But the reason that those aren't considered parks and rec is because there's no league games there. So there isn't youth league there, it's just open to the community. That's why that's not considered recreational. It's more of an amenity than it being recreational.
But back to that original topic, yeah, so in presenting this, I do, the one point I do agree on is either of us were there at the beginning of this, so, if we're gonna go before, I would just wanna be a little bit more knowledgeable. Am I taking the notes that we presented and just reading them verbatim and then standing back? Am I being asked questions afterwards? What would the setting be for that? Or is that something where we would meet beforehand to discuss?
I'm sure, so the process would, I've never had done this, so don't take what I'm gonna say as what it is. I would assume that the recommended changes would be spoke to before council. They would have a copy of your recommended changes, and you would highlight why you want to change them. So that's already in the notes of why, I believe when Victoria originally created them, there was the changes and the reasoning why. So they may have some questions as to why they want to, but it's pretty much written in there why Ptac feels the need to change the responsibility.
My responsibility, Ptac feels the need because.
Right, in the ordinance, it's really minuscule what we're responsible for. And the thought was to take on more responsibilities because we're just not doing that much. And that was a consideration by really the whole board, was that, we're here and we're just not, we decided that, we're not gonna do a comprehensive urban forestry plan because we're not capable of it. We don't know how to do that.
we could contribute to it, but it's not on 5 people right here to do the whole
Right.
thing.
Sure.
Sure.
I feel like I don't have the expertise to do that, and if the city of Beaufort wants that, because that is part of the verbiage in the ordinance. And if the city of Beaufort, needs to have that done, then typically, a city would hire a professional to do it. And it's very, very expensive to do, but, so what we were trying to come up with were some ideas of what we could do, to add to our responsibilities. That was a little bit of that.
And I'm not sure if I got a copy of the notes.
And for our purposes here in going and presenting anything to city council, I think it would be helpful if we discuss this and, simply made a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here are more responsibilities that we want to take on. For instance, assessment of city parks, that was one of the items. So,
As a vice chair, not to in any way diss you, but if you're saying you're not even aware of what these changes were, I'm certainly not aware of them.
no,
Maybe we should ask to meet with the work session the next month when you're here and you're, obviously, y'all two know more about
Right, and
all of that.
I think that that's a good idea too. I think it is, just so everybody has a clear understanding. Maybe so we all could meet to come up with more responsibilities
Yeah.
that we wish to add. So it's really clear, to make the list. It's clear to
Pre-meeting.
us. Yeah, exactly. So,
And that's all I would need, just a pre-meeting.
So Adam, to clarify what I told you last time, the Freedom Park across from the school, it was like some kind of error on the GIS map, interactive map. So I went back and looked at it. So, you click on the parking lot for the marina, that whole strip, anywhere you click on it, it says Freedom Park.
Yeah.
So if we wanna add, say, I don't think Bluff Park is on here, people use Bluff Park, the city owns it, definitely not Freedom Park.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can, if we wanna do festivals, or we wanna do new parks, or anything else, of course, y'all know my interest. But it's not just me, it's the community, so we listen to them, and, yeah.
Well, I think, because right now, one of your duties obviously is commissioning, or decommissioning of parks. Most of recommended decommissioning, the only ones that will decommission is city council. So obviously, as an advisory committee, we make recommendations. So it's city council's jurisdiction to follow through on those recommendations. As you know, when it comes to parks, they're obviously sectioned off. So why Linda was here is because anything pretty much from Revo to Carteret, from Boundary to Bay Street is hers. It's under her purview. We assist in a lot of ways. We collaborate and work together through all these issues, but she has the main responsibility of those parks. The city, Public Works itself has the outside of that, the rest of the 35 parks and views that we maintain. But we don't have the power to decommission or commission parks or change names. We have the power to make recommendations.
right, and it has to go to
Yes,
city
and
council.
then it has to go to city council. So everything that this committee does is recommendations to then go in front of council for them to bring our recommendations to fruition. So we're doing that. It's still in your responsibilities, even with the recommendations that were made, that is still something that is in your responsibilities. So that's not going to change whether you want to go ahead with the changes or, meet up and add some more additions. That's something that didn't get changed from the last recommendations.
I think it would be helpful to, first of all, ask everybody to read the ordinance. It's just a couple paragraphs.
It's short, yeah. You
It's
talking about the
very-
duties?
Yes.
Yeah, very short.
Yeah, it's very, very short. And familiarize yourself with that and then go from there. So, Shay, you're brand new here, and it's kind of unfair to ask you to come up with new ideas to add to our responsibilities, without doing that reading, so.
I thought we could, after I read it really word for word, I couldn't tell you what else in there now, but, I thought we can do whatever we want. It's related to parks and trees until somebody starts screaming,
No.
because we have no power. All we do, like you say, is recommendations. To a certain, I'm making a joke about it.
No, I
But
understand.
there's no consequence.
But everybody.
We're not out there, moving a tree with driftwood.
Yes.
Somebody would scream, and if we chopped it in a wood chipper, I'm sure somebody would have our heads on a platter, but to a reasonable extent, we can do whatever we want. We have no power, so it's recommendation.
Everything.
Nobody's suing us, nobody's applying for a waiver, nobody's applying for an exception to the rule, etc. They may have done that in the past, but not nowadays, so I don't know, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, everything here is just recommendations. You cannot act on anything until it is approved by either the city manager or city council. There are certain things that the city manager can approve, and there's other things that have to go before city council for approval. So there's a lot of committees, that they don't have the power to act on things or allocate funding or make changes. That has to go through the city council. Each member here, when you interviewed, one of the things is, are you okay with being on an advisory board? And knowing that your recommendations are just advisory and recommendations. And each candidate here said yes. So we know from the get that there is a chance that our recommendations don't follow through. So it's part of the way that it's written up.
We're an idea farm.
Yes.
We present ideas, and everything starts with an idea. There's gotta be somebody to come up with the idea. And I mean, I think it's important to discuss any and everything. Decisions aren't made unless they're thought of first.
Yes.
So, and there's it's a chain of command. And I feel like the recommendations that we give definitely hold weight. It's either we give recommendations or we don't, and at that point, we're here for it. So,
If you look at my position as parks supervisor, I myself cannot go to my parks and just willy-nilly do whatever I like. I have a chain of command that I have to follow. So if I did something that allocated funds and I didn't go to my director and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing, this is what I'm thinking about spending it, and I just did it, I would have repercussions for that action. So it's the same here. We're making recommendations. You were put in a position to advise the city, and it's up to the city to make the decision on which direction they would like to go based off of those recommendations.
So, yeah, so Shay was not here we got on about 6 months ago, me and Isaac. So the bluff, we was, I had made a motion early on, maybe 3 months in, maybe or so roughly, that we suggest the city council as a recommendation that look into the bluff as a nature trail. And it would be multi-use. It was never, the city never really did anything with it. The only thing I see down there is, big pipes coming out of the bluff for drainage. That's about all it was done. There was, maybe years ago, decades, it was overgrown. But there is some maintenance done with the greenery, and but it was never enhanced, left for a park so people could use it. People go down there. Yeah, so it has everything. It has the elevation change, the water views. It's probably the prettiest spot in Beaufort. So if people said no to the waterfront. So I mean, there's homeless people on the waterfront. So I mean, we don't do away with the waterfront park because there's homeless people, and there's always a stick in the mud. So somebody will say no to this, just like somebody said no to the waterfront park. If it was somebody from Mossy Oak saying, hey, I want a waterfront park, you ain't getting one. So because the mayor wanted it, he got it done. And hell, I've seen it recently, a couple times. People are saying, well, I think it looked better before the waterfront park. I mean, for each their own. So most people would enjoy a nature trail down there. Everybody I talk to.
You were talking about a bicycle trail, right?
Well, it's a multi-use. You can run on it, you can jog on it, you can bike on it. I had a guy want to know where he could go mountain bike, and I said, hey, go check out the bluff, because he was on his bike and he was a tourist.
Wait a minute, I think we're off topic.
So.
We're talking about duties and responsibilities.
Well, I was just telling Shay where,
Oh.
filling her in. So, yeah, I mean, the meeting is kind of long. Those people ate up a chunk of it. Of course, it's very passionate with Mr. Driftwood. So duties, so we were talking about recommendations, so I just filled her in. So there we go.
Well, so.
Maybe I should make another motion next meeting.
So.
It's a simple recommendation. I mean, like Adam said, you shoot it down, let the chips fall where they fall. That's it. I mean, we're going to take 20 years to do this. Southside Park. I mean, don't get me started. I'm gonna just leave it at. We took 25 years to put in some parking spaces and a playground, and it wasn't 25 years of building it. It was 25 years. Let's see, we can finally pull the trigger and do something here And it was an enormous price tag for just because of the parking. They wanted to put in the stormwater pipes. That was a chunk of it, surveyed, all, you know, this is volunteer, so it's zero, it's almost zero tax dollars. So I don't see the, like somebody a lot smarter than me said, what's the downside to a nature trail
The city will never allow volunteers
at the block?
to manufacture a trail on city property. There's too much liability. It wouldn't be done by certified professionals, and that is the important fact to think about here. I understand your passion for it, but the city will never go in the direction of allowing people to just manufacture or in some way, shape, or form change the landscape of their property. There's too much liability.
Okay. Okay, so back to the responsibility changes before council. What we were talking about.
Well said, Adam, well said. I don't know what, yeah, so we're on time constraint here, I don't have anything to say.
It would be helpful to meet at another time before that council meeting to discuss what to present to them for the changes. So, when do you want to do that?
And we're talking about doing this, when you're back. Or
Well-
doing it May sixth still, but just meeting before May sixth.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, if you're gonna be obligated to present that to council at that time, you're gonna have to. And that's coming up pretty fast.
Yeah.
So you'd have to do it, for my purposes.
If you're going to add additional changes to something that was already voted, it would have to come again before the board, voted on, to then go before council. So it probably would not be next month.
To go to council.
This board has already voted on the recommended changes to go before council. So if you're going to make amendments to that and add additional, they will have to be brought back before the board during the next Ptac meeting to be voted to be brought before council.
So you're, based on what will be determined by this board in the future, perhaps at our next meeting, there could be additional responsibilities that are, that we want to add.
Yes.
So it may be.
Because the changes that you would be making would not be the same that were.
Right, so it may be, better to just wait until this coming meeting with the next. You follow me?
Yes.
So we have time to work on that. And to think about it, to think about what else we want to do.
I'm fine with that.
So you don't have to worry about meeting on the 6th.
But y'all have to worry about meeting.
But we do need to meet to discuss, any kind of changes. At which, if we add more things, then we would vote on it during our next formal meeting, which would be next month, and then present it. Does that suit you?
Yes, I mean, Fridays, mid-morning was are really good.
Okay.
Okay, so, let's see.
Would you like me to set up a Zoom for you guys?
Yeah. Way too many. Or any other day around 5 or thereafter. Minus
Who do you say?
Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, after 5.
After 5, it's fine by me.
What date is it?
Well, we didn't pick a date.
Oh, Friday?
I'm
No,
looking at Fridays.
Well, I was saying,
Not Friday.
I was saying Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday after 5. She was saying Fridays.
I'm just saying after, well, I mean,
How about next Wednesday? How about next Wednesday, do you want to meet at 5?
That'll work.
Okay.
So that's the 30th
That's correct.
at 5.
Okay, where do you wanna meet? We can't meet here, right?
I wouldn't know, to be honest with you, if the room would be available.
I have a big conference room upstairs at my business that could be utilized at that time.
Where's your business?
It's on Rebo Road, right across from Pepper Brothers.
In Fort Royal?
Yes.
Real Martin Landscaping used to be. It's
Oh,
like
okay.
1850.
Going out on the right-hand side?
Yes.
Right before, what's the park? Lenore?
Yeah, Lenore, right before Lenore Park. It's literally the new extension that they made, Spanish Moss Trail. My shop is right before that.
Okay.
And then Pender Brothers is directly across. So, I'd be willing to offer my upstairs to sit down and meet at that time. There's a TV up there, so we could always throw this on the TV and go over it.
1814 Revolt Road,
1850.
1850. Does that suit you?
That's fine.
At 5 p.m.
All right. All right, we'll plan on that.
Is there a place I can read the ordinance online?
Yes.
Or there is?
Yep, I will, I'll send everybody the link to the ordinance after
Thank you.
this meeting, so that you guys can
It's,
just.
it's a very, very short read.
Mhm.
You know,
If you get a
it's-
muni code, and then you type in City of Beaufort, you'll be able to go through it, and then I believe
Section
it's
5.
parks, and then I believe it's inside of parks. I think it goes through the parks rules, and then the tree board advisory. So, but I will send the link, so you guys can go read to it, so you don't have to read every single ordinance that's in there. So.
Okay. Moving right along. Community garden phase 2.
So, I know Shay is now attending her first meeting, so I know I asked the committee to come up with recommendations for a community garden that is going to be implemented in Southside, whether it's phase 2 or future phases. But the city manager has requested some recommendations from Ptac. So I'm okay if you want to push this to the next meeting, so that Shay has time to come up with her recommendations,
Okay, recommendations for,
community garden ideas.
And this is for
Southside.
Southside Park.
Mm-hmm.
Phase 2, they had the idea of putting in a community garden.
Right?
And then last meeting, we discussed regulating, how would we regulate that, how that would run. We talked about how other communities, HOAs, POAs in our city manage their community gardens. And just kind of brought up, the best way to keep it in an orderly fashion, I guess.
you have some experience with this, and you had some great ideas. I don't have any experience in this, but I can certainly learn. So one of the things that I think about is fencing. How do you protect it? How do you protect the plantings and stuff that people have, from other people going in and taking what they want?
More like you need 8-foot fence to keep the deer out.
That's kind of.
Are there a lot of deer at Southside?
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
All the time, yes.
I've got deer in my yard.
You see them running in the mist,
Yes.
Do you?
so yeah.
With the addition of the playground and everything and the new renovations, there's definitely an influx of young adults, younger children that run around. So, being able to, I think a fence might also add some privacy and security to the areas.
To the area where the community garden would be.
Yes, to the community garden itself. Like, just in my mind, I'm thinking have however many foot area that is designated for the community garden, put a fence around it, and within that fence, put planter boxes, and, you know, that way somebody can come in and they can do their planting and stuff in the planter boxes. Maybe even run some water spigots or a water hose, or a connection. People can bring their own hoses, so that way the city doesn't have to worry about running through 28 different hoses, you know, bring your own hose. And having somebody maybe adopt a planter box, you know, in the
We should be
community.
writing this down.
I have most of this written down.
Yeah, I think we talked about,
Yeah.
There's a fee for having your plot.
That's-
There's a fee.
that's
right,
one thing
yeah.
we definitely said.
But having your own hose is a good idea.
Because I mean, the city will go through an innumerable amount, it's like dog bags, you know? They will just take 100 while they're there.
Right, I understand.
They do.
So Public Works would possibly erect, and then, I guess, then you have to erect the, planter boxes. You have to decide how big the planter boxes are.
The contract, whoever, so if the community garden's getting built, I don't know if it would be built during phase 2, which would be done by the contractor that's awarded it, or if it would be implemented after phase 2 is done, then that would be something maybe we would build planter
And
boxes.
here's another,
Phase 1 was the playground
Oh.
and the pavilion.
So you're calling the community
As part of phase 2.
phase 2.
Because phase 2 is the dog park, the 2 middle fields, and
So someone's at my door and they say they got a piece of glass in their tire. I gotta go change the flat tire.
Alright.
My recommendation, don't get a piece of glass in your tire.
alright, so
so.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Goodbye. So another thought too, which would also be cost efficient, a little bit more labor intensive, but there is also a double dig bed. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but basically what you would do is you would dig, 6 to 8 inches down. You don't walk on it, but you dig a space, 7 by 7, whatever.
Yeah.
And what that does is then you put that dirt back into it. And by not stepping on it, you're building a loose soil, very aerated.
Yeah, aerated.
And then you can plant in there, and you could put a 2x4 border
Yeah.
around it. And so, depending on how many plots you wanted to have in that space, the only thing you're getting is a couple of 2x4s versus building a planter box or buying a full-size planter box. So that's cost efficient.
yeah.
It is labor intensive though, but that's basically the concept is you take that out.
Box itself. That's why, another reason I wanted to move. And I had to push the button to get out, it's locked.
I got you.
If y'all wanna stay here, we'll figure it out. I don't care.
Double dig. What about a rototiller?
Yeah, I mean you won't get as deep. You'd have to go.
Yeah.
You'd have to go a while. Then you'd have to push that dirt back and then go a while again. I mean, I did 2 in my backyard, just because I got this book from an older horticulturalist that I knew, and he gave me a bunch of books, and I saw it, and I said, I'm gonna try this.
Yeah.
And it was, it took me. I take that back. It was 4. It took me a little while to do it, but I had a good yield of vegetables and stuff. The 2x4s that I put in, they lasted 3 years before they started to deteriorate. So then, you got about 3 years, and that's also providing that somebody to trip over it or hit it or whatever. But so the maintenance of that is probably a little bit is less.
Yeah.
But that is another option too, is just a double dig versus a planter. Planter's the easiest.
Yeah.
A double dig would be cost efficient.
Interesting. See, that's another consideration though, is the maintenance.
Yeah.
And the cost upkeep, right, year after year for planters, for all of this.
And then also, if you're going to open it up to the community, you don't know who's going to go in there, but by by having them pay a fee. Maybe it's even a contractual fee to where they have the plot for a season.
Yeah.
And then it becomes open again, to another person, so that way it's not the same person over and over again. It can be done, for sure.
How are you gonna legislate somebody came in and stole my vegetables?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's a problem with this whole concept, seriously.
Security cameras.
Being in a public,
We armed
Mud
the deer.
shots.
We armed the
it's
deer.
it's gonna be interesting. I think it'd be dumb being in a public
Yeah,
setting,
me too.
legislating community garden
Bambo.
Yeah, Bambo.
is going to be
Write that down.
interesting.
I agree with you. I know that they've got a big one out of Dawton
That's a private
community.
and everyone that I've seen that's successful, it's because it's a private community and not a community garden out in the, yeah. And I've seen a lot of, but like community garden for like a set apartment complex where you know, there's, but Southside's a big park
It's open public park.
and, I mean, I don't think you can build a secure enough area to keep people who don't belong. I would be upset if I paid a fee and I came in and all my tomatoes have been taken. And so who am I gonna go complain to? Who's gonna give me my tomatoes back?
City manager.
Am I getting my fee back? What about all that labor I put into my tomatoes? I was married to an attorney for a long time.
I'd have to see the chain of command first. See, who's in charge of the community garden?
So there,
Yeah. No,
his name, you want to put Adam Willens on
no.
speed dial.
No.
He's already on speed dial.
Yeah, pretty.
There you go.
His phone's probably gone off 20 times.
Yeah.
So that's, so those are considerations.
Yeah.
If they were asking for feedback, that's our feedback.
So I'll go with,
Ask the city manager, is there a city attorney?
yeah, right. So we'll use pretty much the same recommendations that we previously talked about last meeting, and then with the addition of the two different ideas for plant boxes.
You know, there are community gardens where like schools come in and tend to the garden and the food is all given to like food banks and stuff, like it's nobody's private
Right.
plot.
Mhm.
But,
See, I think that you understand that those are not considerations, but
That's something to think about.
yeah, really.
It kind of bounces back a little bit to the liability issue with nature trail. There is liability there with the community garden. That's the key word.
Liability.
Liability.
turning through and get their money.
Indeed.
But personal opinion, I'd be very interested to try to come up with a solid plan or listen to, a plan that's put in place after the recommendations. I've never seen it done,
You mean a public one?
a public one.
Like NUSC has a community garden in Charleston, downtown, on the facility of the hospital. And they have master gardeners come in but it's nobody's one thing. It's those things are given to food banks and that makes it less people are gonna go in there and desecrate it, that type of community garden versus.
There could be big problems. So,
And that's the thing, I have to see if they're thinking more of the privatized where, they're not gonna do maybe like a garden per se, but maybe it's just a bunch of, spring, summer, winter annuals with some perennials, like what style of garden are we talking here? And that's really, because if it's just that, then.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they wanna come in and plant something and then have the community be responsible for the upkeep.
who is they?
The city.
Maybe they wanna designate, maybe they wanna see if, local businesses want to adopt a plot or adopt a planter box and maintain it. There's many ways, there's many ways that it can go, yeah.
Okay.
As long as there's a bolt and a lock with master lock.
And Bambo.
Video camera.
Yeah. Alarms.
Lighting in case somebody decides to go water their.
That's where you put on the sprinklers,
Oh,
if
yeah.
somebody goes in there. New Parks Assessment Mercy Cemetery.
Yes, so as I told you, in new business, we are going to select Mercy Cemetery, which is located out here, just on the opposite side of Joe's University Bikes, across from the National Cemetery. We're looking for us to go there and make our assessments of it to see if there's any way that we can add, some liveliness to it, some colors, maybe something to make it look a little bit better upkeep. Because right now it's kind of, it's just very weedy, blow, and then out of there. I would like for us to look at a way of maybe beautifying it, especially at the front area. We did go ahead and install the split rail there, just to avoid the issues of when Reach Across America comes in and the parking there. We don't want people going in there and parking on the graves. So maybe there's a way that we can add some coloring or flowers or perennials along the split rail to add some color or some,
Japanese maples.
Japanese made. So I did a project once for school. It was like crepe myrtle.
What about little gem magnolias too? They don't get massive like the.
And they're evergreen, whereas the maple is gonna be deciduous.
Yeah.
Um,
And, little gems are put in streetscapes and close to new apartment buildings and stuff all the time because their root system isn't gonna be invasive to the, but yeah, anyways. That would be a good thing, you could space those out and they have a shiny green color with a brownish underbelly and.
Space them out along the split rail.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the watering situation obviously comes into play, they would need some type of water. And I don't wanna, throw more trees at you to water, but it's, once they get put in, they can be really pretty.
Established.
But there's not a water supply there.
And that limits the planting.
Because all the cemeteries the city does not own, the city is in a maintenance agreement. We've been in a maintenance agreement with that since like the 90s. So it's under our purview to maintain and upkeep the tree trimmings, such as, so forth and such, but it is not city-owned property. It's just for us to maintain and beautify.
What about Confederate adjustment on the split rail? Like, it's pretty hardy, it's evergreen, smells good. Makes a nice
Right now. this
block.
time of year.
Nobody's gonna drive over that. And it's just, it doesn't require a whole lot of water to get established.
Yeah, I think anything to kind of beautify the area, because I think it deserves it. I think obviously you have the National Cemetery, but I think those three cemeteries, because you have Mercy, Citizen, and then Evergreen there, I think they also deserve to be beautified in some way.
Jim's pretty good. Any work?
So I encourage you all to find some time, whether you do it as a group or if you go there individually, just to walk around. Like I said, it's not a very large cemetery. It's probably half a street block, so.
And it's pushed back and there's stones, headstones stuff in the ground that go all the way up to the wood line.
Yes.
On the far right corner, there's even
There's
some that are
in there.
inside.
Yeah.
Like a little
There's a
bit tucked
tiny
in.
little pocket.
Is it still an active cemetery? Are people still buried there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a sign outside? Is there a sign indicating?
It's just right
It's
past
right
his-
down from his bicycle.
It's right next to it. You could walk from his bike shop and then first left.
Cemeteries are funny things, like you say the city is contracted to maintain them, but is it a private cemetery? Like you have to be of a certain family to be buried there?
I don't know if that's the case. I just know that, I don't know if it's like state owned or what it may be, if there's a private company or landowner that owns the cemetery. It was just that nobody was maintaining it, and I guess it was reached out to the city back in the 90s that I can pull up the actual agreement and see what it says, but it was pretty much because it was in the city, with the city made an agreement to upkeep, all three cemeteries and make sure that they're beautified, throughout its agreement cycle, and we've never broken that agreement.
Okay, we'll do it. New business, public comment?
Had to ring the doorbell. Trying to be ragged.
I got you.
Forgive me.
You changed the tire that fast? Went home, changed the tire,
Hey,
and
Adam.
back?
If this isn't up in like 5 minutes, I'm gonna have you end it because I gotta set up a PD for the joint council.
Bicycle tire.
So we got a little bit of time constraint. Does anybody have any new business they would like to bring up for the next meeting? Or do you think we got our hands full?
I think we got our hands full.
We say new business?
Yep.
Yeah, I just say, I make a motion. Liability, they say about everything. Might as well not drive down Buford streets. I mean, I was driving yesterday at 1:30, 2 o'clock, playing hooky. I went down Carteret, I went down Blood Ladies on a Wednesday. Couldn't believe the traffic, liability, but that's a different topic. I just make a motion, we suggest to the city council that we recommend that they look into a nature trail at the bluff. People will come out and they will say they want it, or they don't want it, or something, or an alternative response, and let the chips fall where they fall.
Is there a second? Okay, we have no second to your motion.
And it's just a recommendation. If they shoot it down, they shoot it
Motion's
down.
tabled.
So, okay, fine, I'm good with that. I should have made, the time I brought the actual recommendation, the letter, I should have made the motion then, but I can see this is gonna go on for 20 years, so. And then after 20 years, who knows what they'll put down, and I'll be dead by then. So,
I don't say that.
You're not
So-
gonna say that.
Adam, you'll be alive, you put something down there, okay? Isaiah, you'll be down there, I butchered your name, I said Isaac, I apologize.
It's
Do they call you that?
Then I get called Isaac sometimes.
I apologize.
I just go with it. No, it's
I was trying to buy a house in Pigeon Point, and, oh man, I could speak on forever, I didn't get it, we squabbled over peanuts, they didn't come down, I didn't go up, so I wanted to go, man, it threw my mind for a loop, so if I'm out of my sorts, and I usually already run ragged, thank you all for putting up with me.
Okay,
Do we have
our
any
meeting is
public comment?
adjourned.
Oh, I got the last word.
Sure.